Hey guys, it's Elsa here, and today I'm coming at you to talk about all the books that I read in the month of May. May was a pretty great reading month for me. I ended up reading a total of 12 books. I ended up reading one book off of my physical classics TBR, and I just really loved a lot of what I read. So it was a really great month. What I used to do my wrap-ups was I used to do them in the order that I rated them, and lately I've just been way too lazy and tired to do that, so I'm just going to talk about them in the order that I read them. The first book that I read in the month of May was Unbeatable Squirrel Girl Volume 8. Oh my gosh, I forget the name of this one. What was the name of this one? I completely forget, but the cover is on the screen. I really enjoyed this, really have no complaints. I believe I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5 stars. I love Squirrel Girl. They're always fun and entertaining and leave me feeling quite happy. So if you've been watching my wrap-ups for a couple months, in the month of April, pulled a classic, and it's a big one. And I didn't read it in April, but I read it throughout April and May. And that classic is Don Quixote by, I don't want to pronounce his name wrong, so I'm not going to say it. I read the biggest book that I've ever read. I've never read a book this big. My copy lands at a whopping 982 pages. And I read probably close to 700 of that this month, because I remember in April I was saying in my wrap up like, oh yeah, I just got to like a 200 page mark. So I read a majority of this month, and that's really what the first half of this month was me doing, was reading this book. But my God, did I absolutely adore this. I never in a million years, if you had asked me this year, last year, anything like that, if I would have enjoyed an almost 1,000-page classical novel, I would have said heck to the no. I don't like large books. They're not my thing. I personally tend to I love around 300 to 400 pages. A lot of times it has to be a really, really, really good book to be over 500 pages and be very good for me. I don't like reading big books. They're just not my thing usually. This was so fascinating. I'm gonna stop holding it up because it's heavy. This was such a complex novel. I was not expecting to be this interested in this story as I was. Don Quixote is basically about a man who calls himself Don Quixote and decides one day that he is going to be a knight. Based on all of the novels of knighthood that he has read, he decides that he's going to go out and be a knight, and he's going to find his princess, what was her name? Oh my gosh. Del Tabasso. Oh my gosh, he never shuts up about her. It's basically about him and his good old sidekick Sancho on many of their adventures of being a knight, and then his companion / whatever Sancho is. And it was such an interesting novel because the way that it's written is that you get parts about Don Quixote and what they're doing, and then they stumble upon people in places, and then it kind of sets up in like this mini novel within itself, because then the person that they stumble upon tells their story and they go all into those details, and then sometimes those people end up coming along with Don Quixote and sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's just a passerby, and the story goes so many ways and it is so interesting, and I both felt so frustrated and both so bad at the same time for Don Quixote as a character. I feel like he goes through so many struggles within this novel, because basically he convinces himself in his mind that he's this knight when he's not. Like he's not. Like he just picks up one day and starts doing this, and he ends up in the process of it getting himself very hurt at times and in a lot of trouble. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Honestly, throughout the whole thing, I really thought I would give it a 5, and then the ending happened, and I found it to be not very satisfying. Was the entire novel still worth it? yes, for the time period, there are moments where it's so funny that for being written, I think in like the 15 or 1600s. So for being written at that time, it's such a complex novel, and there's so much delving into different characters that is very interesting, and there's just so much to unpack, and it was so interesting. I do recommend the ending. I don't really know what kind of ending I wanted, honestly, but I felt a little let down. I felt like it felt almost a little rushed, but overall, it's still such an interesting, well-rounded story, and really has so many tiny things that you could really read into that I'm crazy for saying this, but I could see myself rereading this in the future. That novel out of the way, the rest of this wrap-up should go pretty quickly because that's the biggest book that I read this month. I ended up finishing Don Quixote right before Bar-a-thon, so the next book was actually the first book that I finished for Bar-a-thon, and that was An Unwanted Guest by Sherry LaPena. LaPena? I don't know how you pronounce that author's name. I really enjoyed this book. This was an interesting book because throughout it I thought, oh, this could be like a 3, maybe a 4. I ended up giving it 5 out of 5 stars. It's one of those mysteries where it's like it has to be a certain, it's like they're trapped in a place, so it has to be one of them. And I was still shocked by the ending, surprisingly. And I guess I was shocked by how much they delved into the characters' motives. That was very interesting. They very much analyzed the psyche of the whodunit at the end, and that was very interesting. I would recommend it if you're in the mood for a quick thriller that won't take up much of your time, even if you end up being disappointed by it. The next book that I read was Mighty Jack and the Goblin King by Ben Hatke. Oh my god. I absolutely love this. 5 out of 5 stars. There were moments throughout this where I actually laughed out loud because it was so cute. Like, the goblins in this graphic novel were so cute. Like, the characters were adorable. I absolutely loved it. I am so excited for the, like, collaboration between him and Zeta the Space Girl that comes out in September. I'm so excited for that. I love this author. I love this series. I love Zeta the Space Girl. If you're looking for a very solid sci-fi graphic novel, middle grade author, I can't recommend Ben Hatke enough. The next book that I read was Force of Nature by Jane Harper. This is a like kind of detective-y thriller. It's not really, first when I read it I thought it was gonna be just like a thriller, like a normal thriller, but this kind of has like a detective type element to it because the books follow the same main character. But this is the sequel to The Dry that I read a few months ago that I really enjoyed. I also really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I really love this author. This author knows how to write really good suspense. It's one of those things where even if I could predict who had done it, the way she writes suspense is so good, and the way that she unpacks the information is done in such a cool and different way. And she really does throw in twists where it's like, whoa, that really? Like, I was not expecting that. Trigger warnings for like a suicide attempt. It didn't really go into much, just a character attempts suicide. It's not, it doesn't go into like their thoughts or anything like that, but that is in there. And also for eating disorder. I don't know how well this is handled. I don't know much about eating disorder rep or anything like that. One of the main like suspects in it, their child suffers from an eating disorder. And I don't know how well that's represented, if it's handled well, if the discussion around it is handled well, if anything like that is handled well. I cannot say, but it is in there. It's not a main character, so it's not like you're in their head about it or anything. It's just you're told that this character has an eating disorder. So just wanted to throw that out there. Again, I cannot attest that it is good, bad, or indifferent. I really did enjoy it, and I'm excited to see what else this author releases, if there are going to be more books in this series, or if she's going to write other things, or what, but I am excited because she writes such good thrillers. The next book is The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl Volume 9, which I know is titled Squirrels Fall Like Dominoes. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, but I really liked the plot in this one. I thought it was really thought out and really meaningful. I loved kind of the character growth that happened throughout it. One thing that is different is I guess they changed the artist or one of the artists in this one, so the graphics look much different. They're still good, but it's definitely a different art style. I really enjoyed this one and I don't have much else to say. Least favorite book of the month, which was a terrible book and I do not recommend, is I'd Rather Be Reading. The author has a really long name. It'll be on the screen. This was not good. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. I did not enjoy it. Basically, it's like this book for readers and it features a bunch of bookish art / pictures and like a couple essays throughout it, and it's just really unnecessary, frankly. It basically is like typing in bookish things on Pinterest but like not getting as good of results and getting things that I've literally seen all over the internet. And it didn't even have like an overall like theme of like where the pictures were taken from, and I just didn't enjoy it. It wasn't aesthetically pleasing. The essays weren't really good that they like put in this book. I just don't recommend it. The next book that I read was The Royal Art of Poison by Eleanor Herman. I absolutely love this book. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I loved this book. This book is all about basically people in the olden times on purpose or accidentally poisoning themselves. First, it goes into, the book kind of has like multiple stages. The first stage is that it talks about like generally how life was and how there was like actually poison in like medicine and cosmetics and all of these everyday things. And then it goes into how like royalty like would deal with being poisoned or the potential of being poisoned and like the process that went into it with certain royals, which was very interesting. And then like the last part was that she actually went into different like historical figures, people who they thought at the time were poisoned that probably weren't poisoned after all, that probably died from another unknown medical issue that just couldn't be figured out because of the time period. And it was so fascinating. The way that it's told is very, like, it's very friendly to people who are not used to nonfiction. Like, I am very not well-versed in nonfiction. I haven't read a lot. I don't know a lot of nonfiction authors. I'm trying to delve more into it, but it is a little bit complicated. And if you've never read any nonfiction before, this is a great book to read. I think it's very entertaining, frankly, and kind of morbid and kind of fascinating, and the way that she does it is, I thought, really well done. The next 2 books that I read were issue 3 and 4 of Black Badge. I'm very interested to see where it goes. I gave these both 4 out of 5 stars. There is nothing wrong with them. Especially I think in the 4th volume, the storyline started to get really interesting. And I think this series has like a lot of potential. The first 4 issues, so of course it's still going to be setting up the world and the story and all that stuff, but it's very interesting. It's basically about a bunch of teens who are like spies of sorts. It's just different, and like the format's just kind of cool. Kind of dig it. So the next one was one that I was shocked by how much I enjoyed this, and that was Nancy Drew, The Palace of Wisdom. Oh my gosh. 5 out of 5 stars, going into one of my favorite graphic novels of this year. If you did not know, I'm kind of a Nancy Drew stan. I'm kind of like a Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys stan. So going into this, I thought it was just going to be about Nancy Drew, but surprise, surprise, the Hardy Boys were actually in it. And I love the old Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys super mysteries. I love those. And the fact that this was basically that, but in modern day, like, I loved it. I loved all of it. It was very diverse. They actually ended up making Bess a plus size character, which I thought was so cool and so great. And they made her have a love interest, and it was just so cool and so great. And there is so much like diversity in it, and I just really, really loved it. I highly recommend it. I thought the storyline was spectacular. Even if you remotely like Nancy Drew or the Hardy Boys, I really recommend this, and the artwork is really, really, really great. And the very last book that I read in May was Miss Marvel Volume 10. Again, 5 out of 5 stars. This was so good. I thought I loved the last volume, but oh my gosh, I can't believe how far this comic series has come. Like, it has turned into such gold. Like, it's a true masterpiece at this point. I freaking love this series. I love the direction it's going in. I love how much she's growing as a character. I love all of it. I love it so much. I love it. If you have read the very early volumes of Miss Marvel, I highly recommend you continue. Because this girl, my girl, grows so much, and she becomes so wonderful, and she is such a precious being, and everybody grows so much, and it's just cannot recommend it enough. Those are all the books that I read in May. I'm gonna wrap it up here. I'm getting very hot. It's summertime officially, the season where I start dying. If you guys have read any of these books, please let me know down below. I would love to know. That's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope I shall see you in the next one. Bye.